Brush Girl Murder, the tragic mystery of April Dawn Lacy. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. The land was quiet that morning. Too quiet. It was December 1996, cold Oklahoma morning. The sky hung gray, heavy with winter air. On the outskirts of Oklahoma City, past the highways, past the neighborhoods, the land opened into thick brush. Fields of tangled weeds, barbed branches, and dirt roads few people traveled. It was here that a truck driver pulled off the road. He needed a place to rest. Instead, he found something else. At first, he thought it was a mannequin, discarded, left to rot in the brush. But as he stepped closer, the truth clawed at his chest. It was not a mannequin. It was a body. The girl was young, too young, her frame small, her skin pale against the dull weeds, her hair tangled, her clothes torn. She had been dumped there, hidden but not well enough, as if the killer wanted her found, as if the brush itself whispered her secret. The man froze, his breath clouded in the air, his stomach twisted, his hands shook as he reached for his phone. He dialed. His voice cracked as he told police what he had found. A girl, a body, a nightmare he could never forget. Police arrived quickly. Sirens pierced the winter silence. Flashing lights washed over the weeds. Officers stepped carefully into the brush, their boots sinking into soft earth. And then they saw her, the girl, lying in the weeds, her face tilted to the sky, her body broken. They didn't know her name, not yet, but they gave her one. The Brush Girl. It was easier than saying the dead girl in the weeds. Easier than admitting a killer had left her there. The scene was grim. Detectives combed the brush. Every detail mattered. Footprints, tire marks, strands of hair, anything the killer might have left behind. But there was little, too little. The brush swallowed evidence. Wind and weather erased clues. Still, they worked. Still, they searched. Still, they promised they would not stop until they found who she was, and who had killed her. News spread quickly. A body had been found outside Oklahoma City. Teenage girl. No name, no answers. Reporters swarmed the scene. Cameras clicked. Microphones shoved forward. Who was she? They asked. What happened to her? But police had no answers. Not yet. So the papers called her Brush Girl. And just like that, she became a mystery. A nameless victim. A story whispered in homes and classrooms. A reminder that danger could hide anywhere. In the days that followed, the medical examiner confirmed what police already feared. The girl had been murdered. She had not walked into the weeds alone. Someone had put her there. But who and why? Her face was bruised. Her body carried marks of violence. Whoever killed her had done so with rage, and then left her like trash. But she wasn't trash. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's friend. They just didn't know her name yet. Detectives started with missing persons reports. They combed through files. Photos of smiling teenagers lined desks. Some had run away. Some had disappeared without a trace. Could one of them be the Brush Girl? The problem was there were many. Too many. Runaway teens were common in the 90s. Some fled broken homes. Some fled abuse. Some were pulled into drugs or gangs. And many never came back. But this girl, she was different. Someone had killed her. This wasn't just a runaway case. This was murder. The autopsy revealed more. She was young. Maybe 14. Maybe 15. Her life had barely started. The killer had taken it away. With violence, with cruelty, with purpose. Detectives felt the weight. It wasn't just about finding a name. It was about finding justice. For a girl no one yet claimed. But weeks passed. No one stepped forward. No one said, "That's my daughter." No one said, "That's my sister." The Brush Girl remained a mystery. The town grew uneasy. Parents held their children closer. Whispers filled the streets. Who was she? Why was she killed? Was the killer still out there? Fear spread. Rumors grew. Some said it was a gang killing. Some said it was a ritual. Others believed she had been silenced. The truth was darker than anyone knew. For the officers on the case, every day felt heavier. They pinned her photo on the wall, a sketch of her face, reconstructed by experts. Eyes open, a haunting stare. They looked at her every morning. They swore they would not forget. She would not become another cold case. But the odds were against them. The 90s were filled with cases like hers. Runaways, drifters, unidentified bodies left in fields, rivers, alleys. Some were never named. Would she be one of them? The newspapers gave updates, but the updates grew shorter. Interest faded. Other stories took the headlines. Other crimes demanded attention. And yet, in the background, Brush Girl's case lingered. A shadow on the edge of Oklahoma City. A ghost in the weeds. Some detectives went home at night and couldn't sleep. They pictured her in the brush. Cold. Alone. Forgotten. They wondered who she had been before death. Did she laugh? Did she dream? Did she have someone who loved her? Someone somewhere had to know. Weeks turned into months. The trail grew colder. The evidence faded. The case slowed. But one truth burned inside every investigator. Brush Girl had a name. They just hadn't found it yet. And until they did, her ghost would haunt them. Because a body in the weeds is never just a body. It's a life, a story, a crime screaming for justice. And for April Dawn Lacy, that story was only beginning. Before the weeds, before the police tape, before the word Brush Girl stained the headlines, there was April Dawn Lacy, 14 years old, born in Oklahoma, raised in the cracks of a life too hard for a girl so young. She had dreams, she had fears, she had a name the world almost forgot. April's life was not easy. Home was not always safe. Money was always tight. Arguments were common. Stability was rare. Her parents struggled. Addiction, alcohol, bills that never seemed to stop piling up. April grew up watching it all. She grew up fast. For kids like her, the streets whispered. They offered escape, freedom, a place to run when home felt unbearable. But the streets also carried shadows. Shadows that swallowed runaways whole. April was bright. She was sharp. She wanted more than what she had. But she was also fragile. 14 is too young to fight a war every day. Too young to survive a world that preys on weakness. Friends remembered her smile. Soft, hopeful. But they also remembered her restlessness. April never sat still. She wanted to be anywhere but home. So she wandered. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes for days. And sometimes she didn't come back at all. The system noticed. Schools noticed. Social workers noticed. April slipped in and out of foster care. She bounced between relatives, shelters, and the streets. Each time she disappeared, someone filed a report. Each time, the police marked her as runaway. And each time she came back. Until the last time. April had dreams. Even if life didn't give her room to grow them. She loved music. She loved drawing. She loved being with friends who made her forget the chaos at home. But survival came first. When you're a teenage runaway, dreams don't keep you warm. Dreams don't keep you safe. The streets did not care that April was only 14. Predators didn't care either. To them, she was vulnerable, an easy target. And April, she trusted too easily. She wanted to believe people meant well. She wanted to believe there was kindness in the world. That trust would cost her everything. Police looking back on April's life found a trail of small disappearances. Times she ran, times she hid, times she was listed as missing, but later turned up alive. This made her case complicated. When she vanished in December 1996, it didn't sound unusual. To some, it was just April being April. Another runaway. But this time, April wasn't running. This time, April wasn't hiding. This time, she was gone. And within days, her body lay in the weeds. The investigators didn't know her name at first. She was Brush Girl, an anonymous victim. But behind the scenes, missing person reports piled up. Faces of girls who never came home. Detectives compared them one by one. And then, something clicked. A case file. A photo. The resemblance was haunting. April Dawn Lacy, 14 years old, reported missing by her mother. Could this be her? Dental records confirmed it. The brush girl had a name. Her name was April. The announcement shook the community. The mystery girl in the weeds was no longer faceless. She had a story. She had a life. But the revelation brought more pain. Because now it wasn't just a mystery. It was a tragedy. A child was dead. A child the system had failed. April's family was devastated. Her mother wept when police came to the door. Her father stayed silent, broken in his own way. Her siblings didn't understand how life could suddenly stop. Friends cried too. Some weren't surprised. They knew the risks April faced. But that didn't make the loss easier. It made it worse. Because they all knew April deserved more. She deserved protection. She deserved safety. She deserved a chance to grow up. Instead, she was dumped in the brush like garbage. For detectives, identifying April was both a breakthrough and a heartbreak. They now knew who she was. But that didn't bring them closer to finding her killer. And April's background, it made things harder. She was a runaway. She drifted through dangerous circles. She met strangers. She stayed in places that weren't safe. And each detail made the suspect list longer. Was it someone she knew? A friend? A stranger? A predator who saw her as prey? No one could say. Not yet. The press seized the story. Brush girl identified. Her photo ran on front pages. Her smile contrasted sharply with the horror of her death. The community reacted with shock. Some blamed the parents. Some blamed the streets. Others blamed the system. But blame didn't solve anything. Blame didn't catch a killer. Blame didn't bring April back. And while the world argued, the investigation stalled. Detectives worked around the clock. They retraced her last steps. They interviewed friends. They questioned family. They chased rumors. April had been seen near downtown, hanging out with older teens, talking to men much older than her, walking into neighborhoods where trouble was common. Each lead opened a door. Each door led to another dead end. It was like chasing smoke. But one thing was clear. April hadn't died alone. She had been taken, hurt, and discarded. And the way her body was left, it raised chilling questions. Was her murder random? Or was it a message? Some detectives whispered about ritual. The way her body was posed. The strange marks. The rumors of occult activity in the area. Others dismissed it as wild speculation. But the whispers never went away. April's death became more than a tragedy. It became a mystery wrapped in fear. Parents warned their children, "Don't end up like April." But those words carried a cruel truth. April wasn't just a victim. She was a warning. And for investigators, the deeper they looked into April's life, the darker the shadows became. The people she met, the places she went, the secrets she carried. Every answer only raised more questions. Who wanted April dead? Why was she left in the brush? And what did the strange details of the crime scene really mean? The mystery of April Dawn Lacy was far from over. It was only beginning. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The crime scene haunted detectives. Weeds, brush, the body of a 14-year-old child. April Dawn Lacy. But something about it didn't feel random. The first officers on the scene described an eerie silence. No footprints, no tire tracks. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed the evidence. The weeds around April's body were trampled in a way that didn't make sense. It looked staged. Her body wasn't hidden. It was placed, almost displayed. That detail unsettled everyone. Investigators began to ask questions. Why here? Why this spot? Why was her body left where it could be found? Was it carelessness? Or was it deliberate? Theories multiplied. Some detectives thought it was simple. A runaway picked up by the wrong person. Murdered. Dumped. But others weren't convinced. They saw patterns. Odd details. Hints of ritual. One detective whispered to a reporter. It felt like a message, like someone wanted us to see her. That single comment set the community on fire. Suddenly, whispers spread. Cult, satanic ritual, a sacrifice. It was the late 1990s. The satanic panic of the 1980s still lingered in the public mind. And now, April's death poured gasoline on those fears. Detectives faced two battles. The first was finding a killer. The second was controlling rumors. The public demanded answers. But the police had almost nothing. No fingerprints. No DNA they could match. No witnesses. The case was slipping away before it even began. April's background didn't help. She was known to run away. She drifted in dangerous circles. She met strangers. She vanished for days. That made investigators' job harder. The suspect pool was massive. Anyone she met could have done it. Friends, acquaintances, predators who hunted the streets for girls just like her. Where do you even start? Police retraced her last known movements. Some said she was seen near Oklahoma City. Others claimed she was in Midwest City. Rumors placed her in motels, in cars with older men, with people no one wanted to name. But every lead grew cold. Witnesses were unreliable, memories blurred, and those who knew April best often had secrets of their own. Secrets they weren't eager to share. The detectives turned to the body. The condition of April's remains might hold answers. The medical examiner worked carefully. Her injuries told a chilling story. She had been strangled. Not quickly, not cleanly. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was intimate. Her killer wanted control. Her killer wanted power. And the way she was left in the brush, that control didn't end with her death. The examiner also noted unusual marks, not just from the struggle, but something else. Cuts, bruises, signs that made some whisper, ritual. Could it have been part of something bigger? A cult? A sacrifice? Or were these just the scars of violence? Misread through fear? The answer was unclear, but the speculation refused to die. Local reporters jumped on the ritual murder angle. Headlines screamed, "Brush Girl may have been sacrificed." Churches warned parents. Rumors spread of satanic gatherings in the woods. People claimed to see strange symbols, strange fires at night. Most of it was paranoia, but paranoia spreads faster than truth. And for detectives, it was a nightmare. The real killer could be anywhere, hiding behind the chaos, watching the hysteria unfold. The FBI was contacted. Specialists came in to review the scene. They studied the weeds, the positioning of April's body, the marks on her skin. Their conclusion was cautious. No clear evidence of ritual, but they didn't dismiss it entirely. "There are unusual aspects here," one report noted. Unusual, but not definitive. That word, unusual, only fueled the fire. Meanwhile, April's family demanded justice. Her mother begged the public for answers. Someone must have seen something. Someone must have known. But the silence was crushing. If people knew, they weren't talking. If someone saw, they were too afraid. And April's story faded from headlines almost as quickly as it appeared. Behind closed doors, detectives worked leads that never reached the press. They looked into known predators in the area. Men with records. Men who preyed on runaways. Men who cruised the same streets April was last seen on. Dozens of suspects were questioned. None could be tied to the crime. They checked shelters, foster homes, schools. Nothing. Every clue unraveled into dust. Then came a chilling thought. What if April's killer had done this before? What if Brush Girl wasn't the first? What if she wasn't the last? Detectives pulled case files of other missing girls, other unsolved murders. They compared them one by one. The similarities were there. Young girls, runaways, found in remote places. Was there a predator hunting Oklahoma's streets? One detective believed it. He pushed the theory hard. But without evidence, it went nowhere. The department was stretched thin. Other cases piled up. April's file gathered dust. And the killer, he walked free. Still, the whispers refused to fade. Parents warned their children to stay close. Teenagers told stories about the brush girl. Some swore the area where she was found was haunted. But beneath the fear was a darker truth. A killer had taken a child, and he was still out there. Years passed. Technology advanced. New forensic tools emerged. Detectives hoped DNA could crack the case. But the evidence was degraded. Too much time, too much exposure. The results were inconclusive. For the public, April became a memory, a headline, a ghost. But for her family, she remained a wound that never healed. A question that never found an answer. Who killed April? Why was she left in the brush? And what did those strange details really mean? The investigation had reached a breaking point. Detectives were split between two worlds. One side believed it was simple, a runaway, predator, a tragedy of chance. The other side believed something darker, a message, a ritual, a crime meant to terrify. Which was the truth? No one knew. But the story of April Dawn Lacy was not finished. Because years later, new information would surface. Information that could change everything. The murder of April Dawn Lacy shocked Oklahoma. But shock doesn't last. Headlines fade. People move on. Other crimes take the spotlight. But for April's family, time stood still. Her mother carried her picture everywhere. She begged anyone who would listen for answers. But the world had stopped listening. The name Brush Girl still lingered. But it was more of a ghost story now. A warning parents used to scare their kids. Not a case. Not a pursuit. Not justice. Detectives had tried. But by the early 2000s, April's file had gone cold. Too cold. No witnesses. No suspects. No new leads. The silence was crushing. Her family felt abandoned. Her friends felt forgotten. And April, she became just another statistic. But every year, on the anniversary of her death, her mother called the police. She asked the same question, the question that burned like fire. Are you still working on my daughter's case? The answer was always the same. We're trying. But trying wasn't enough. Meanwhile, whispers still swirled. People in town still talked. Some claimed they knew who did it. Some hinted at names. But when pressed, they went silent. Fear, loyalty, shame, whatever the reason, no one came forward. For investigators, it was maddening. They knew someone knew the truth. They could feel it. But without evidence, their hands were tied. Then came technology. By the mid-2000s, DNA testing had improved. Cold case units across the country were reopening files. Science was cracking murders thought unsolvable. Could April's case be one of them? Detectives reviewed the evidence. They had biological samples, but the condition was poor. Exposure in the brush had degraded much of it. Still, they tried. The tests came back. Partial profiles, hints of something, but not enough. It was like seeing the outline of a face in fog. Close, but not clear. Another disappointment. And so the years stretched on. Oklahoma changed. Neighborhoods shifted. New crimes rose. New tragedies demanded attention. But April's case remained. Silent. Waiting. Her family refused to let her be forgotten. They pushed for news coverage. They kept her name alive. But each year, fewer people remembered. The story of the brush girl was fading. Until one day, everything shifted. It started with a routine check. A detective assigned to cold cases pulled April's file. He read through the reports, the photos, the witness statements. Something caught his attention. Something that had been overlooked before. It was small, insignificant even, but it nagged at him. A timeline, a witness statement that didn't quite line up. Had April really been last seen where they thought? Or had she been somewhere else? The report suggested she might have been seen in another city, miles away, with someone no one had questioned. If that was true, changed everything. Detectives began quietly re-interviewing people. Old friends, acquaintances, anyone who might remember. Most said the same thing. It had been too long. Memories blurred. They couldn't help. But a few details surfaced. Strange details. People recalled April being with an older man, someone with a reputation, someone dangerous, but no one said his name. Not directly, only hints, only shadows. Detectives dug deeper. They pulled arrest records. They looked for men with violent pasts, men who had been in the area at the time. One name stood out, a man with a history of abusing young girls, a man with a record of violence. He had been questioned briefly in 1996, but nothing had tied him to the case. The file said no evidence. But now, with new eyes, detectives weren't so sure. Had they missed him? Had the killer been in the file all along? Meanwhile, technology kept advancing. By the 2010s, new forensic methods were changing the game. Familial DNA, genealogy, the kind of tools that had cracked cases like the Golden State Killer. Detectives looked at April's case again. Could genealogy help? The problem was the evidence. Too degraded, too faint. Still, they tried. And again, the results came back empty. Another heartbreak. But then, another twist. A tip came in. Anonymous. Brief. Claimed April's death wasn't random. Claimed people knew who killed her. But they were too afraid to talk. The tip mentioned a name. A man with connections. A man who had slipped through the cracks. Detectives checked. The name matched one of their old persons of interest. The same man they had already begun re-examining. Now the puzzle was forming. They tracked him down. By now he was older, still living in Oklahoma, still with a history of arrests. But could they prove anything? Not yet. They needed more. So detectives kept pushing. They searched for new witnesses. They reviewed every scrap of evidence again. They also turned to the public. They reopened April's case in the media. They reminded people of the girl found in the brush, the child stolen from her family. And slowly, the silence began to crack. People came forward, not with confessions, not with proof, but with whispers. Whispers of threats, whispers of parties, whispers of things that happened in the dark corners of Oklahoma. Pieces of a puzzle too large to see all at once. Detectives couldn't confirm all of it, but they could feel it. The case wasn't cold anymore. It was alive. It was burning again, and it was leading somewhere. April's mother felt it too. For the first time in years, she had hope. Maybe the truth was coming. Maybe justice wasn't dead. But justice moves slow. And killers, they hide well. By the mid-2010s, April's name was back in headlines. News stations revisited the case. Her story spread online. True crime communities began talking. People asked questions the police couldn't answer. People dug into records. Amateur sleuths connected dots. The world hadn't forgotten after all. But every step forward came with new fear. What if the killer was still out there? What if he was still watching? After all these years, was he confident he'd never be caught? Was he laughing at the investigation? Or was he terrified, knowing the walls were closing in? April's story was back. And this time, it wasn't going away, because detectives were preparing for something big. A revelation, a name, a suspect they believed could finally answer the question. Who killed April Dawn Lacy? But first, they had to confront the darkest chapter yet. The truth about the man they had begun to suspect all along. And what they found was worse than anyone imagined. The investigation had circled for years. False leads, empty promises, silence. But now it was closing in. Detectives believed they had a suspect. A man who had always been on the edges. A man whose name had surfaced before, but had slipped away. His record was ugly. Violence, abuse, crimes against young girls. The kind of man who should never have been free. The kind of man who could end up in April's path. Police revisited the old interviews. They noticed how quickly he had been dismissed. They noticed how shallow the questions were. Had detectives in 1996 wanted to move on too quickly? The thought sickened them, because if he was guilty, then the killer had been hiding in plain sight for nearly 3 decades. But suspicion isn't proof. And proof is what April needed. Investigators pushed again. They tried new DNA technology. They scraped the evidence files one more time. And then, a sliver of hope. The lab reported that even degraded samples could now sometimes yield results. If they could match even a partial profile to a known offender, it might break the case. The detectives held their breath. The results came back. Still too weak. Still incomplete. Another blow. But this time they didn't give up. They turned to genealogy. The same method that had caught the Golden State Killer. Maybe, just maybe, someone in the suspect's family tree could link back. It was a long shot, but at this stage, long shots were all they had. Meanwhile, April's name was spreading again. True crime forums debated the case. Podcasts featured her story. Documentaries hinted at the horror of the brush girl. Her family watched torn, grateful that people cared, angry that it had taken so long, heartbroken that April's voice was only heard in death. The public began pressuring the police. Was a killer walking free? Had the case been mishandled? Why had so much evidence been ignored for years? Tough questions. Questions the department didn't want to answer. But April's mother kept demanding them. The suspect, this man detectives had circled back to, was still alive. Still walking. Still free. The thought made people's blood run cold. If he did this, who else had he hurt? How many others had suffered while justice stalled? Detectives knew they needed something more. They began revisiting old witnesses. Some who had been teenagers at the time. Now they were adults. Some were willing to talk in ways they hadn't before. And what they said was chilling. Several people remembered April being seen with an older man before she vanished. Descriptions varied, but many pointed to the same type of figure. Tall, rough, known for hanging around young girls. The profile matched their suspect. It wasn't evidence in court, but it was more smoke. And where there's smoke, detectives pushed harder. They interviewed the suspect again. He denied everything. He claimed he didn't even know April. But his story shifted. Details didn't line up. The inconsistencies piled up. Investigators knew he was lying. But lies don't equal conviction. At this point, April's story became more than just a case. It became a fight over accountability. A fight to show that victims like her mattered. Her face, once a forgotten photograph, became a symbol. Her name carried weight again. April Dawn Lacy. Not Brush Girl. Not a mystery. A daughter. A victim. A child whose killer had been protected by silence for far too long. The theories swirled. Some believed April had been targeted by a predator she trusted. Others whispered of parties, drugs, and dangerous men. Some thought multiple people were involved. That her death was covered up to protect others. The truth was murky, but one thing was clear. She hadn't just vanished into the brush. Someone put her there. As the years passed, the frustration deepened. The suspect remained a free man. Technology brought them close, but never close enough. And still, April's mother carried her photo. Still, she asked the same question. Will I live long enough to see justice? For now, the case remains open, unsolved, waiting, but it is not forgotten. Because April's story has spread beyond Oklahoma. It is told in classrooms. It is dissected online. It is whispered in true crime circles as one of the most haunting unsolved murders of the 1990s. And every time her name is spoken, the silence breaks. The man detective's suspect? He still feels the walls closing in. He knows the world is watching now. And he knows technology only gets sharper. Evidence never truly dies. Secrets rot in the dark, but eventually, they come to light. April's legacy is not just tragedy. It is a reminder that cases can't be shelved and forgotten. That victims are more than files in a drawer. That families never stop hurting. And that killers should never feel safe. April Dawn Lacy was 14 years old. She had dreams. She had a future. And someone stole it. Her case is unsolved. Her story unfinished. But unfinished doesn't mean over. Because someone knows the truth. Someone remembers that night. Someone can still break the silence. And maybe one day they will. Until then, her name echoes. Her face haunts. Her case lingers. The brush where she was found may be gone. The crime scene may be overgrown. But the question remains: who killed April Dawn Lacy? And when will justice finally come? For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.